Brovicast Thursday, May 23rd. Like normally every day, because you guys were reading a different book, I had to record you guys every day, but I recorded them every day also. But here towards the end of the year, don't tell my other classes, but you guys tend to behave a little better, so that's why I recorded you. Trust me, I'm also shocked, but that's just the way it is. So I tend to record you guys at the end just because it's going to make things a little easier for me. It's me being selfish. Again, if you've turned in tests, then this is them saying.
Pardon the interruption. Any
Graders.
7th grader with the last name starting with an A or a B, please bring your iPad to the library for collection.
Well,
Your last name does not start with an A or B.
I said not me.
Okay.
Please come to the library with your
Except for
iPad.
the 7th grade one. I just look like a 7th grader.
no.
That was bad. So anyway, if your test is turned in, then you're needing nothing the next couple of days. Just you with a smile, enjoy your few days, school iPads. Hopefully you. If you are wanting to redo my test or anything like that, and you no longer have your iPad, you're more than welcome to use your phone or actual computer or something like that, and that's fine too.
Are we allowed to get assignments after a final?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Is this your way of trying to report a teacher for making you smarter?
Yes, Ms.
Yes.
No,
She's giving us assignments. She's giving us
On the
some
last
practice
day
for
is
3
class.
days. On the last day, we have to watch a video. We have to go packing.
This last assignment is like so boring.
Hi, welcome back. Again, I'm not doing that, so please don't release your ire and anger at me because of something other people have done. I agree with you, but I don't get to control other classes. I only control my class. But thanks. Yeah, she's legally allowed to. Hi, Jojo.
So like, if everybody like gets the back of their chairs, would anybody lose points? Because technically, if you think about it, the people that are
Is there only one particular person we're worried about?
No. So let's say
Wait, hold that thought. So if I have anyone else that is wanting to write on my podium, I can charge you the points, and again, you're welcome to do it before or after class. The Sharpies are on my desk in the little bucket thing if you are wanting to. I'm assuming I had y'all and y'all do it. Anyone else wanting to? And then once I write you down, then you are good to do it. Most likely you probably won't do it today just because of the story we're going to get into. But I will give you guys through the end of the year. I got you, Evie. I would never write your name down. What's up, dear?
What if you next year run out of space on that?
Then I did that already with my white one, and then I'll probably end up going to this thing over here. So from where May is, if she looks over here, the whole side of this bookshelf is all kids writing on it. And so I just moved to another piece of furniture. So I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
hey, there's some space,
do it with
there's some
the
space on that one.
I know, I thought about that too. Yearbook wise, if you got your yearbook yesterday, it doesn't bother me whatsoever. I have my yearbook on my desk, which you are also more than welcome to sign. I will have it out now through the end of the year. I also have some pins that are next to it. Here are my requests as far as my yearbook goes. One, if there's already a kid there, then don't get up and go over. Just wait till they sit down so there's not a line, because that's going to bug me. Two, I do not care how much you write. If you have a lot that you need to get off your chest about me, you're more than welcome to.
What kind of targeted?
Because you were. My only request is don't write big. Don't write like a whole page. I hate you, die in a creek. You can put that really small, and that's fine.
Then you won't see it.
Really small. And then also don't write over other people's stuff. Because again, I'm gonna read everything in there. So just don't write over other people, and then don't write really big. And then other than that, it does not matter to me. If you want me to sign your yearbook, more than happy to. And you have two options. One, if you just want me to sign my name, bring it to me anytime, and then I will happily sign my name to it. If you want me to write you a message, which I'm happy to do, and I will write you out a full message, you have to leave it with me overnight, because I don't have time during the day, because I'm doing this whole talking thing, that there's just not time for it to happen. Leave it with me, I'll take it home, and then you get it the next day. And you can do that today, all the way through technically the last day of school. If you leave it with me the last day of school, I just drop it in your mailbox the day after that. I have this thing called a car. I can just drive around. I can just chuck it in there. And then if you're creeped out about me knowing your house, realize it's in Skyward. I just I don't have it memorized. and some of you know where I live.
Mr. Brovik, you have Christmas lights at night?
I do. I have the whole year. Tomorrow, we are doing a class picture. At the end of every year, I take a picture of all of my classes together that I hold on to, so I will send this out to you so you guys will get a chance to see them, but just giving you a heads up, start of class, we're all going to get together for a picture thing, just so you're aware.
Is that Eliza?
It is Eliza. That's last year's 6th period.
Oh, Eliza's brother and my brother used to be friends, and like she used to
And then
bully me
again,
a lot.
if you are wanting to retake tests, you can. Each time you retake it, it does lower it by the 2 points, but blah, blah, blah. Alright. I had kids yesterday when I was talking about my purple car because the kids came back to see me because of it. This was the picture I had up on my wall. So that is the ride. The reason I stopped driving it, because I would still be driving it today, except a deer hit me. I did not hit the deer. What's that? You want me to keep telling the story instead of making fun of you? Okay. And so, again, I was driving next to Conner Prairie on my way to pick up Pizza Hut, and I was driving along, and there's woods over next to Conner Prairie, and there was a deer literally standing on the side of the road, just like watching the cars go by. And I was driving along, talking to my brother, like, I'm gonna go pick up pizza. And I made eye contact with the deer, and he looked right at me, and I was like, hi, and then he just jumped right in front of me. Like, apparently he was like trying to give me a hug. And jumped, hit my car, smashed the front end, spun, smashed the side door, spun, smashed the trunk, spun, stopped, looked at me, ran off. And I was like, oh, apparently he was fine. My car went, and then was dead. And so not a happy day, and now my car is gone. That deer apparently made it a personal thing.
I know what you drive.
I did go finish getting the pizza, but you know, pizza doesn't taste as good when you're crying. Hi, Alex.
So, yesterday you said that like a high school kid came to see you. How'd they get into the building?
So usually if, nowadays they email me and I make sure that the office knows they're coming. But if you just show up randomly, oftentimes they'll either send me like an Instagram message that pops up on my phone, like, I'm here, can I come in? And I'll come open the door for them. We have these things called doors. This is how kids get into buildings. Then, yesterday we covered a story about my poor choice thing. Let's get into today. So yesterday was mostly you guys getting a chance to laugh at me. There may be a little bit of laughter today, but it kind of goes a different direction. Today's not sad. That's going to be Tuesday. Today's just not quite as upbeat and happy. Because when I got in trouble when I was 8, I was just a dumb kid. When I got in trouble at 14, I was bad. And it's a tougher story for me to tell because it does still hurt because I can't laugh it away. It was, okay. So this started my 8th grade year, but leading into freshman year. And there were kids at my school in 8th grade who started shoplifting. And they were like hoodlum kids that you would think of. You're like, you're a bad kid. And they were shoplifting. But what they were doing was making money. They would shoplift at Walmart, and then they would shoplift either CDs or CD players, back when we had those things. And they would bring them to school and sell them to other kids, and they were making money at it. And being an 8th grader, I was like, I also like this thing called money. But I was like, what would happen if someone who was really smart, I thought myself, started shoplifting? Would I be good at it? And the answer was, yeah, I was unfortunately really good at it. But I explained it by saying I'm only going to shoplift 2 things. And I limited myself to only 2 categories of items: comic books and candy. And those were the only 2 things I would allow myself to shoplift. But I did it a lot. I did a whole bunch of comic books because I like to read, and I did candy because, well, it's candy and I was a kid. And I did this through the end part of 8th grade, and then I did it all summer between 8th grade and freshman year, where I would ride my bike to stores in town. Lived up in Noblesville. I would even do it because I would do it in front of cops because I wanted to do the challenge, because apparently I was not smart, I was dumb. And then started into my freshman year at high school, and I was on the wrestling team, which will play a role here in a moment. And I ended up shoplifting so much because wrestling season, I couldn't eat food for the most part because I was always trying to make weight, which kind of sucked. But I still liked the shoplifting because it kind of became an addiction. and it was not a good addiction. But I would shoplift candy still, and what I would do is bring it to school and just give it to other kids because I thought it made me popular, and it did. Well, it made the candy popular. I would literally just show up to classes with a bag, and I would be like, "Who wants candy?" And I would just be like a little candy Santa Claus, just like giving candy to kids. And it was great. Went well. And then one day, I was in the hallway in the morning. It was the day we had a wrestling meet after school. And I was not the suave young man that you may think I was. And I had a girl that I had asked out, or was wanting to ask out for homecoming, but I'd not quite worked up the nerve to do it yet. But I was like, I'm going to be a big boy soon. It's a thing I can do. And I was trying to figure out the best way to approach her when I saw a kid in the hallway who was using this breath spray, which is the stuff that, I even have a little package because it's got to play a role.
Any 7th grade students with the last name C through G, please come to the library.
Cat
with your
through giraffe.
iPad or
That would be you,
collection.
dear.
Last name starting with C
Library,
through G,
big area of
7th
books.
grade.
Cat through giraffe. And so this was actually a past student bought this for me after I told the story at the end of one of my first years of doing it. She thought she was hilarious. But breath spray, and I saw a kid in the hallways where you pull off the cap, like, shh, and spray it in your mouth, and then he talked to the ladies, and the ladies were all like, ah. And I was like, I bet it's because of the breath spray. It wasn't. It was because he was good looking and a football player. But I assumed it was just the breath spray. And I was like, if I got the breath spray, I bet that I could hit on the ladies too. So I decided that day that I was going to steal some breath sprays that I could talk to the ladies, and then I could go and ask this girl out. So after school, I had our wrestling meet. And the way sports work at the high school is a little different than how it works in junior high, where here, if you have a game or a match or a meet or something like that, typically you go to the coach's room after school until the bus leaves. High school's not like that. High school, they treat you like big people. And they go, hey, our bus is going to leave at 5 o'clock. Go do whatever you want. Be here by 5. And Noblesville, where I went to school, there was right behind the high school was this strip mall, which had like a CVS and a McDonald's and stuff like that. So anytime there was a game, all the kids would leave at the school and then go over to the strip mall and then run around like the CVS and stuff like that. So I went over there with a whole bunch of my wrestler friends, and a lot of them were also kids who made poor choices. And we went into this CVS that was there. And where the CVS was, it's now an AutoZone. I went back to take pictures of the actual location. It's in Noblesville. There's a little McDonald's is still there, but this was a grocery store and this was a CVS that was there. Right there, like this is the CVS, that building right there is my high school. And so that's where we would just literally walk across the parking lot and then come over here. So after school, it was me and probably, 10 to 12 kids that were on my wrestling team, and we were walking around the CVS, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to steal candy, I'm not taking anything like that today, I'm just going to grab the Banaka, and then I'm out. I had no idea where the Banaka was. So this will play a role in our story in just a moment. So it was back before we all had those magical little doors that would shuka. You used to have to push doors with your hands. But this particular one, I remember set up, was it had this little glass room that you would first walk into, but it had this was a flat wall, and you would have to walk in, and then it had like a metal railing thing. So it would separate, and you'd push the door open, and then you'd go that way into the store. And then over here was the checkout area, and checkout area you would step in, and then that's how you would exit. So I'm walking around the store, have no idea where the Banaka is, and eventually I found it, and it was, apparently the packaging has not changed because this is the exact same package it was way back when I was there, and found a package like this, and I'm walking around, and this was November because it was wrestling season, so I had big puffy jacket on, and I remember walking around the store, wherever I found it, and I was trying to figure out, because I'd never stolen Banaka before, I didn't have a plan because it was not my usual thing, so I was like, well, I'll just walk all the way over here to the edge where I figured no one can see me, and I walked down that edge, and as I walked along, took the package, ripped it open, took the little breath spray out, stuck it into my pocket, and then took the packaging and just shoved it onto a shelf, walked down to the end of the aisle, turned, and I was like, that was easy. And then walked around for a few minutes to sort of, get rid of suspicion, and talk to a few of my other wrestler friends. I was like, all right, I'm going to head back over to school. I'll see you guys there. And they're like, all right. And so, since I wasn't buying anything, I went ahead and bypassed the little checkout area that was over here. So the checkout area, and I remember my friend Eric was checking out, and I walked by and I hit him on the back, and I was like, all right, man, I'll see you over at school. And I walked through the little first door, and I had to put actually the door pushed this direction, and I stepped through and I turned to my right to leave, and I had grabbed the outside door and I had pulled it towards me. And that was when I felt a hand come down on my shoulder. And it was right here, heavy hand. And there was a male voice that came with it, and it said, hold on a minute, son, we need to talk. And if you've ever done something that you know is wrong, and you get caught in the process of doing that thing that's wrong, there's a sensation that happens in the tummy area where it just sort of feels like it goes, and I had that sensation of just, because that was not going to be good whatsoever. And I hadn't turned around yet. And I still remember the thought process that went through my head. Standing there, whoever it is behind me, my hand is on the door, and the door is open. Like, I can see daylight right there. And remember, I'm on the wrestling team. And we had recently learned there is a maneuver you can do when someone grabs you that you don't get ahead of me. Stay with me for the story. That there's a maneuver you can do. And I figure I'm young and I'm 14, and whoever this person is with the deep voice, obviously they're older than me. And because I learned well and the coach had taught me a thing, I started going through in my head that there's this drop move and a spin, and you dislodge the hand, and then the door comes open, and then I'm going to be out and running and sprinting as fast as I can to get away from this. And I start playing it through in my head. But then there's a small little voice in the back of my head that says, you know, Chad's in there. And Chad was a kid in my grade who hated me, and he was my bully. And he was on the wrestling team, and he had made it his goal to make me miserable. And in my head it goes, if you run, Chad will rat you out first chance he gets just to watch you suffer. And I was like, it is better to be turn your, just go ahead and face the music now, or run and have Chad turn you in, and have Chad have all the joy of your pain. And I was like, oh, that's going to be a tough one. And I was like, oh, daylight's right there, but Chad's in the back of my head. And I did one of the toughest things I'd ever done. I let go of the door. And I remember just releasing it and then watching like, freedom, as the door shut. And the guy turned me around. And I turned around, and it was the pharmacist. And he was holding the packaging right there in his hand. And he goes, son, do you know about this? And of course, like any teenager, my first response was, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I am completely innocent. Whatever could it be? To which he followed up with, son, we have cameras. You're on video. And I went, because that's going to be a hard one to fight. So I went, oh, yes, that's mine. I'm sorry. Should I pay for that? And he goes, you should have done that before you tried to leave. And he goes, come with me. And he does the whole hand on shoulder, leading me through the entire place. In my head, I'm going, holy poop. I'm going to get arrested. Like, I just did a thing, like a bad thing, and this is not going to end well. And then I have this horrible moment where he walks me back through the entire store, holding the packaging in his hand. He did have me pull out the little breast spray I had in my pocket. He was like, give it here, and I was like, and I handed it to him. So he had the packaging and the breast spray, and then led me through the store with his hand on my shoulder, with all of my wrestling friends like popping out, like woo, and like watching me as I walk down, and I'm like not making eye contact. I'm like, can I die? I would like to die. Right now would be a good time for death. Meteor? Anything gonna happen? Nope. And he led me all the way through the back of the store, where there was this silver door that goes into the back, like a storage area. And I remember we pushed through this silver door and went into this back room. And we had chairs like my ones that are in front of my desk, except I remember the chairs, instead of having the rail on the bottom, it had like just the 4 legs. And I remember that because when he grabbed the chair, he drug it, and it made that like as he dragged it across the floor. So we walk into the back room, pushes open the 2 doors, puts down the packaging and the breath spray like onto like a little counter that was to his left, grabs the chair, and then drags it out to like the middle of this room. And I remember the room was like the bare cement floors on the ground, and then looking around, it had like shelves full of stock items and things like that. It was like the back storage room. And he sets the chair down, and he was like, "Sit down." And I'm like, I just like sat down on the chair because I didn't know what to do. And then he went over to a phone that was to my left, right next to the doors, and he called the police. Like, I listened to him like, "Yep, I caught a kid shoplifting here. I don't know, he looks like he's 13 or 14 or something like that." He's like, "Yep, I have him in custody." He's like, "Yep, please send a police officer." And I'm just going like, holy crap, like he's calling the cops.
That costs like $2.
Like real police. This? Yeah, probably something
Then
like
why
that.
couldn't
Yeah, I think he was trying to teach me.
for something of $2?
I didn't say I was a smart kid. And so, I mean, I used to steal the comic books, and they were 75 cents, so I made choices. And so he called the cops, and I remember he then, because I assumed he was going to like stand there and like lecture me, but he doesn't. He just goes, "Stay there," and then turned around and left, and just like walked out. And I'm just sitting in this chair in this back room, and it's just me, and I'm like, holy cow, like he left me alone. And I'm going through my head, going like, trying to figure out if I've just ended my life. Because I remember it's like, well, you were going to go ask out that girl, but that's not going to happen now whatsoever. By the way, the girl was Joanne from my speeches. That was the girl.
Oh, that's what I was thinking.
That was the girl I was going to ask out. And by the way, this did not help things
The one
whatsoever.
that
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah,
And so then I'm also thinking like now, because the wrestling team, like they're going to tell my teachers, and then my parents are going to find out, my grandparents are going to find out, and I'm going through all these things in my head. And then I look to my right, and about where you see the wall, there's an emergency exit door. And it had, don't get ahead of me yet, stay with me for the story. And there was a silver door right there. And it had like the emergency, and it had alarm will sound on the door, and then like the little green exit sign. And I'm like, and I showed you earlier, like my school is right behind that building. And I'm like, I'm like, I could get to that door, wherever that guy went, and I can push that door open, and I can be gone before anyone gets in here, no matter how loud that alarm is. And I start going through my head how to do that. I'm like, if I wait long enough, Chad's going to be gone, and I don't have to worry about Chad. And then I remember what the guy told me, was that I was on video. That was my thought. Because then I play it back, and I'm like, so if they have you on video, and you run, which is really going to piss this guy off, there's every chance that he's going to take that video over to my school because he knows where I go to school, and then he's going to show that video to the office, and they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, this is so-and-so." And so, which would be worse, getting arrested now or running and possibly like getting arrested in class the next day? And I was like, getting arrested in class would be even more horrifying than this. And I remember for my English class, we had to memorize a poem as one of our speeches we were doing, and there was a Shel Silverstein poem I memorized called "The Queen is Coming." It's about a farmer who's talking to these animals, and the queen was coming. And I remember that's how I kept myself sane as I was thinking about running, was repeating the same poem over and over again in my head. And I did not run. I don't know if it was bravery or cowardice that kept me there, but it was worrying about what would happen. And I'll be honest, I've looked back on this moment a number of times and wondered how my life would be different if I had run, because of the fallout of me staying and what eventually happens to me. I wondered if I had taken off and run, if my life would have turned out the way that it did. But I did not run. I stayed there. And I don't know how long it was before the swinging...
7th graders with last name
H.
and beginning with H through K, please come to the library with your iPad.
Hyena through
K,
kangaroo.
7th graders.
Thanks for only like school iPads.
And so, just the school iPad ones. And so, with that one, eventually the swinging doors go open, and the, pharmacist comes back with a policeman. And I remember the policeman being just a big guy, not like that big, but just like big. And they both came in. I remember the police officer was like in full like policeman uniform. And he walked in, he's like, looked at me, and he was like, is this him? And the guy was like, uh-huh. And he looked down, he picked up the package, and he goes, is this what he was stealing? And the guy goes, yeah. And then he goes, Christ, kid, how bad's your breath? And I was like, I just remember thinking, I was like, oh. And then he was like, I came over, and I'm sure he probably read me my rights, but I do not remember that. What I remember is him putting on the handcuffs, which was awful. And it was like a behind the back, and I was a big kid now, so now my wrists were big enough for handcuffs. Yay. And so you have on your wrist, there's these two bones that are right below where the meaty part of your hand is. And if police officers want to be mean to you, they can put the metal of the handcuffs onto those bones, and it hurts, and it is awful. And that's what this guy did. My arm was behind my back. I remember he clicked it on there, and then like he put it on, and then he went clink and like tightened it, and I went yeah, and made like a little sound. And he goes, "Did that hurt?" And I go, "Uh-huh." And he goes, "Good, you're a criminal." And I went, "Oh." And then he put it on my other wrist and did the same thing again. But this time I didn't make a sound. I just went because it also hurt. So I was like, I'm a big boy. And then he did the little perp walk where he picks up my arm and then leads me back through the store. And from the back, led me back through the store. Luckily at this point, all of my friends were gone. Small win on that one because they had a wrestling meet to get to. But it's weird, the little things that stick with you. And one of the little things that stuck with me is as I was coming out, I was stepping through those two little swinging doors, and I looked to my left, and there was a mom to my left and her daughter, who looked like elementary school, I'm guessing like, I don't know, 7 to 9 years old. And Cop was on this side, and my arms were up, and the girl and the mom was this side. And I looked over and saw the little girl, and she smiled at me. She's like a little, and I was like, and I smiled back. And I was like a little like a happy moment of like, oh, life's not bad, little kid smiled at me. And then the mom, who was right there, looked up, and I watched her eyes look at me, get big, and then go squinty. She was like, and then she took her daughter and physically moved her daughter behind her, which doesn't sound like much, but it was that implication that I am such a bad person that she needed to protect her daughter and put her between me and the kid. And I'd never felt that before. It was such a kick in the gut. Like, it was that moment of all these things that happened. Watching that mom do that was just this whole, it made me feel like such a piece of trash. Weird that, 30-some years later, that's still what sticks with me. And the police officer led me out to his police car, which was parked right in front of CVS. And I remember a couple things about this was, one, I sat in the front seat, not the back seat. I have no idea why. I remember he opened up the front seat and I sat in the passenger. And I remember sitting down, there was a shotgun, like bolted in, like right where my face was. And I didn't grow up around guns. It was like the first gun I'd ever been close to. And it was like literally there. I had to like move my head around it as I sat down. And I had to sit down into this little chair. I was like, ugh. I sat down into the little front seat. And I couldn't do the seatbelt because hands. And I remember him reaching in and doing the seatbelt across me and then clicking it. And then him standing back up. And before he shut the doors, I'm just sitting there, him staring at me until I eventually looked up at him. He just goes, try not to steal anything in my car while we're riding. And it was just like that general just, and I was like, And then he came around and then sat down. And then I heard him giggle, which is weird coming from a police officer.
Yeah.
And I look up, and he's staring down the little road area. And from where, like here, down the edge of the building, right here, there are 3 faces looking around the edge of the building. And it was 3 of my best friends that were on the wrestling team. And apparently they stayed to watch me get arrested because that's what friends do. And so he was looking at these 3 faces, and as soon as he looked, and I looked up, like you can see like, all of them like, dum, 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 like all disappeared like a cartoon. And he goes, criminal fan club. And I was just like, oh, again. And then we drove to the police station. And then from there, like, I don't remember the drive. I don't remember getting the handcuffs off. I don't remember if I got fingerprinted. Like, those things don't stick with me. The next big memory I have is sitting in his office. And it was a tiny, like, if you took where my desk is and you made that a wall, like, that's how big his whole office was. It was tiny. And it was just him and I and him typing at a computer. And I remember him calling my mom. And he's like, yes. And my mom's was remarried, so it was Mrs. Nelson. She was like, Mrs. Nelson, it was like, we have your son here. He was arrested for shoplifting. Yes, ma'am. I'm talking about your son. Yes, ma'am. Shoplifting. It was like, you're going to need to come down to the police station to pick him up. And me just going like, I just felt worse and worse and worse. And then finally he hung up, and then he started like typing on his computer. I'm assuming it was like my arrest report or something. I didn't ask questions. And I was sitting there, I had the handcuffs off, and I'm like as close as me to the camera, and he's sitting there typing, and I'm just sitting there trying to not cry, because honestly it was rough. And I remember just sitting there, trying to entertain myself, trying to do something to keep my brain off of what was happening. And I looked over to my right, and one of is either his wall or I might have seen through the glass. I remember it was to my right, there was a whole wall of wanted posters. And aside from like going to the post office with my parents, they'd have them there sometimes, I'd never seen wanted posters. And honestly, they were kind of interesting. And so I was sitting there like looking at these wanted posters because it kept my mind off of me crying. And I remember him typing and then stopping. And he stopped and looked at me, and then looked up at the wanted posters, and then looked at me. And I started like, what? And I looked at him, and he goes, what, you got family up there? And I was just like, that little comment, I was like, oh. And I was like, no. He goes, nah, you will. And I was like, it's just those little things. I was like, ugh. So I just like looked straight down. I was like, I am not going to give you any way to make fun of me or harass me. It's like, I'm just going to stare at the ground. And I did until my mom came in. And I had a good relationship with my parents. They weren't bad to me or anything like that. And when my mom came in, I had no idea how she was going to react. But I remember door opens and my mom came in, and I'm sitting there and she doesn't yell. She just stops and then just looks at me. I was looking at her. She goes, is it true? And I went, she goes, you shoplifted breath spray. And I went, she went, Jesus, I'm disappointed in you. And then just turned around and walked away. Like, just left me sitting there. And I'm like, and the cop looked at me and he was like, eh. And I'm like, okay. So I got up and followed my mom, because I'm assuming that's what I was supposed to do. And she did like a little check. I remember we went to a counter and she was like, I'm taking him home. And we went out to my mom's car, which was this gray Pontiac Bonneville. And she was driving, and I remember I sat in the front passenger seat. And I remember, because it was November, it was cold out. And I was riding with my feet up on like the dashboard, and I had my arms wrapped around my knees, and my head was leaning against this cold window, and I'm watching everything go by. And as we're driving, my mom doesn't yell at me. It was so much worse, because all she did was like that low talking. It was just like, how have I failed you? Like, what did I do wrong? Why is this the kid that you are? She's like, I didn't think that's who I raised. I don't think I know who you are anymore. I'm almost ashamed to know you, right? It was just like that nonstop. I'm just like feeling worse and worse. And eventually we get home, and she was like, go up to your room. When your dad gets home, I'll talk to him. And my dad wasn't like an awful bully, beating, anything. He's like a fairly nice dad. And so she was like, when your dad gets home, we'll talk and we'll come up to you. And I was like, okay. And I went upstairs. I remember laying on my bed in my room, closing my door, and just staring at my ceiling, going, holy Christ. Like, I've ruined my life. I'm 14. I just started high school, and I've got a criminal record. Like, I've been arrested. And I don't know if my getting in trouble when I was 8 is still going to impact this. Am I going to be getting in double trouble for the whole thing? Like, what's going to happen when my grandparents find out? Like, that's going to absolutely kill them. Like, there's no way I can ask out the girl now, because why even need breath spray? Who's going to date the one criminal and that's going to be in our grade? I'm like, and my teachers are going to find out. So now all my teachers are going to judge me. Like, everything you could possibly imagine about how depressed and how upset I was. And then I heard my dad come in and the door closed, and I could hear like muffled talking, and then they came up. And they came in, they knocked on the door like, we're coming in, and they sat down on my bed, and then I sat up and I go, yeah. And they go, all right, here's what we've come up with. And they go, 2 things. 1, you're grounded. And I'm like, I kind of figure that. And then my dad goes, we're going to give you the worst punishment we can think of. And I said, okay. He goes, you have to go to school tomorrow. And I go, that's it? He goes, oh, that's the worst thing that you could possibly have happen. I thought I was getting off easy. I'm like, you're going to make me go to school as punishment? And he goes, listen, what you need to understand is the choice you just made changes your life. Everybody you're going to interact with tomorrow knows what you did. and you are going to have to deal with their reactions all day. What you need right now from your parents is not punishment. You're going to need love, because the world is going to punish you more than you could possibly know. And as a 14-year-old, I thought my dad was an idiot, but I was happy I was getting off scot-free. Turns out, my dad was way smarter than I gave him credit for, because that next day at school was the, hands down in my 48 years, worst day of my life. And having parents that supported me on that day, even though I screwed up, was huge. And he goes, you're going to have to go to school tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, and you're going to have to face all of these people that you have disappointed because of this choice. And I did. And this is before social media. So the next day, I got on the bus, and I remember it started immediately on the bus. Even walking down the aisle of the bus, when you sometimes think people might be talking about you, this time they were talking about me, because I was walking down and you would hear the talking, and then all of a sudden and all of a sudden it's popping again. I'm like, oh yeah. And then when I sat down in my seat, every time kids came on the bus, you could hear them like something happened. They'd look around, they'd see me and like talk to someone else and then sit down. I'm like, oh, it was bad. And I got to school and it was worse, because apparently all of the wrestlers had told everybody they could about what had happened. When I got to school, my locker was covered in Banaka breath spray that had been taped all over it, mints that were taped all over it. Someone had even scrawled thief across the front of my locker. Throughout the day, walking in the hallways, kids would just throw mints at me. As I walked, they would just pelt me with them. Kids would yell things like Banaka, breath spray, and anything you could. You might not know this, but sometimes teenagers are cruel and awful people, and they did not hold back. And it was awful. And I remember, again, small thing. My freshman year, I'd been put into an advanced English class for the first time ever. I'd never been in advanced English, and I didn't really think I fit in the advanced English because those kids were smart, and I didn't think I was smart. But I felt like I was belonging, and I felt comfortable in that class. And I remember going into that class, which was like my happy place, and I remember walking down an aisle to my seat, and there was a girl in the front who had been in my classes for years. I didn't talk to, but had known her forever. And I remember going to my seat, and she was sitting and talking to the girl next to her. And she looked up and saw me, and then I saw her expression change of just that, hi, how are you? And then the small thing she did was her stuff was on her desk, and she took her pencil pouch and just moved it to the other side and then turned and kept talking, which hit me hard because there's that implication that now she doesn't feel she can trust me at all, to the point where she had to move her pencils away for fear that I would end up stealing them. And the day was rough. About a month later, I had to go to court. And if you've ever been to Noblesville, this big building that's downtown, I went to the court. There was an actual courtroom there. I had to go down there with my mom, stand in front of a judge, and I had to go through and do my whole case. I remember being so nervous. I had to dress up like in a little tie. And the judge stepped up. And he was reading my little thing. He was like, so, looks like you have good grades at school. And I was like, yes, sir. And he was like, it looks like you've never been in trouble with the law before. And I went, I was like, no, I apparently have not. Because I'm guessing when I was 8, that didn't go on my permanent record because I was just a dumb kid. So I was like, no, I'm a good kid. And he goes, all right, so here's what I'm going to do for you. He goes, do you know what probation is? And because of stories I'll tell you next week, I did because of my family. And I'm like, yes, sir, I do. And he goes, do you know what deferred probation is? And I went, no, that's a big word. I have no idea what that means. He goes, deferred means to put off probation. So here's what I'm going to do because of your past. We're going to say that this was just a poor choice. And I go, it absolutely was a poor choice. He goes, I'm going to defer your probation until you are 18, which means if you don't get in trouble with the law again before you turn 18, this disappears and nothing happens. It's like it never occurred at all. And as long as you turn 18, it gets expunged, which means it wipes off your record and disappeared. And I was like, holy cow, this is like the best thing I could have possibly imagined for. And I remember smiling. And he goes, I don't think you understand. And I was like, oh, I made a poor choice. And he goes, this is what I'm trying to tell you. He was like, I am deferring your probation, which means if you get in trouble at all between now and the day you turn 18, I am going to punish you to the full extent of the law for whatever the new thing you have done and for this. And you are going to get double punishment for all of that. There is no second time getting out of free. The next time you make a poor choice, I am going to make sure that you have the biggest punishment I can give you. And I go, I understand. He goes, you do not understand. I'm like, oh, this guy's mad. And he goes, if you are out with friends and it is after midnight and you're coming home from a chess tournament and you guys have a car full of babies that you are taking back to where they're supposed to be, I'm going to make sure the police officer knows to pull you in because you are out past curfew. If you are at a party and everyone there is drunk and you are the only sober person, I'm going to make sure it says in there to let everyone go but you, and you get pulled in. He was like, this is your one chance. You mess this one up and you come back in front of this judge. And I was like, I understand, sir. By the way, ironically, that judge ended up being friends with my wife's family, and he was at my wedding. Small world. Luckily, he did not remember me, but I remembered him. And then I had to be done from there. Now, realize, this is beginning of my freshman year. I turned 18 May 18th, just had my birthday, end of senior year, which means I had to go through all of high school never getting in trouble, which seems easy. But it turns out teenagers do a lot of dumb things, and getting through high school without ever doing anything that could get you in trouble is a little bit on the challenging side, which is going to lead to tomorrow. Now, with that, I was on the wrestling team, as I told you, and there is some fallout that I'm going to tell you guys about tomorrow, because there is a thing that happened that should have gotten my coach fired for what he did, but he did not, because the 90s were a whole different time. But that's my story for today. And tomorrow is a slightly happier story.